Everyone. Kevin Durant has done absolutely everything he can to try to force his way out of Brooklyn. Even in the meeting recently with Joe Tsai, he says, trade me or fire Sean Marks and Steve Nash. Joe Tsai basically says, hey, I'm siding with the team here, and they are exploring trades. They are trying to trade Kevin Durant. There is a lot of questions of how seriously are they trying to trade Kevin Durant? Are they just oh yeah, we want Tatum and Brown, but they're just throwing out ridiculous offers that they know they're not going to get just so they can tell Kevin Durant, hey, guess what? We're trying to trade you, but nobody wants to offer anything for you. Sorry, buddy, you might have to stick around. That's kind of what it looks like is happening, and I do think eventually Kevin Durant does get traded. I think it's a matter of when, not if. But Brooklyn is still trying to hold out and is taking their time, which they still have about a month and some change before training camp, right? The big thing is, and the big question is, will Kevin Durant show up? He wants to be out. He doesn't want to play. Is he going to show up to training camp, and is he going to buy in this season if he has to play this season? Let's say he gets into training camp and the season starts and they still haven't traded Kevin Durant. Does Kevin Durant play? Does he show up? If he does play, is he just kind of out there sabotaging games and stuff? We have seen players do that before because they wanted to be traded. Vince Carter is a great example of his time in Toronto before he was traded to the Nets. He just completely was absent and just didn't show up and was just jacking up threes and just playing just all silly. And then he goes to the Nets and he's right back to being the star that he was. So it's not out of the realm of possibility Kevin Durant does the same thing. He might show up just to get a paycheck, but he's not really showing up. And there have been reports that have been coming out that Kevin Durant, if he's not traded by training camp, he's not going to show up and check in for training camp. He's just going to stay home or do whatever or train and prepare for a trade. And even Brian Windhorst has recently came out and said that up until recently, he thought Kevin Durant would show up, that he was that guy that would, he no matter what, he loves the game of basketball too much. He's not going to miss playing the game of basketball. Like Kyrie Irving makes a lot of sense to just not show up. And that's the big question, with these two. And both of these players, I think, are gone. I think Kyrie Irving is eventually going to get traded to the Lakers, and I do think Kevin Durant sooner or later ends up going to Boston. I think is Boston or bust right now. But these two guys, I think, their time in Brooklyn is coming to an end. And Kyrie Irving is a guy that you could see sitting out and just saying, I'm not going to play. Kevin Durant doesn't want to be here. Ben Simmons, I don't even know if he's going to show up, this, that, and the other. And he just doesn't play. And Kevin Durant, many people, myself included, were like, hey, he's still going to play, right? It's Kevin Durant. He's not going to want to just waste a year of his career. But it looks more and more likely that's the case. Even Brian Windhorst has said, hey, as much as I didn't think he would, it's looking like he might. It looks like he might not show up to training camp. Now, not showing up to training camp and not playing in actual games are two different things. And that's something we need to clarify, right? Him not going to training camp is likely not the end of the world, but it shows, I'm not playing, guys. I'm not going to play for this team. And it just puts more pressure on Brooklyn. Here's the other thing, too. If Brooklyn doesn't trade these guys and they sit and they decide not to play, especially if they decide together, then you are in trouble if you're Brooklyn. Because one, you can't tank. And if these two guys don't play, you're not a playoff team. You're basically a tanking team at that point. And two, if they don't play, guess what? You just lost all leverage. Right now, you probably will get more for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving than you would if you go into the season and these two guys are still on the roster. Because if these two guys implode that team, you lose all of your leverage. Because now teams are going to be like, why would I give you anything? I'd rather just ride it out and then wait for you to get so desperate, lose all your picks. You want to play hardball, let's play hardball. Go ahead, keep running, keep paying these two to sit down. Keep going that route. Because the thing is, in today's NBA, it's not hard to force yourself to sit out. If you want to get paid, all Kevin Durant has to do is just get on the court. He's had a history of injuries. Oh no, I pulled a hamstring. He gets a private doctor to sign off on it, and now he gets to sit out and get paid. It's the league that we are currently in. And now the new CBA and everything might completely change all that. But currently, as it stands, the Kevin Durant has the possibility of just, or even if he just plays, and just lightly plays and goes out there and whatever, he, rolls his ankle or something. He's supposed to miss a week and that week turns into months. because, he still has soreness and stuff. And like, you could just, if you're Kevin Durant, you could draw this out to where you still get paid and you don't have to play. Plus, does Kevin Durant want to go out there and actually kill himself for this team? Is he going to go out there and actually play and give 100%? He knows I'm Kevin Durant. Every team in the league will trade for me still if they can. I mean, teams wanted me even when I had an Achilles injury and they didn't even know if I would be able to play again. Like, you think Kevin Durant going out and not playing, you think teams are going to say, no, we don't want Kevin Durant? Of course teams are. The difference is teams aren't going to be willing to give up as much, and you lose what you could potentially get for a package. What package are you going to get that's better than like a Jaylen Brown? Even if you can't get Marcus Smart, what package is better than Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and then 3 first-round picks, right? I mean, maybe Phoenix can put together a better package come January, but at that point, Phoenix might look at it as like, why would we do that? Like, especially if Phoenix is still good, they're still a contender, things like that. Like if they're the number 1 seed in the West, and it's like, do they really want to mess up their chemistry if they're on a great run? Like, you don't know what's to come if you don't trade these two now. It makes no sense to play hardball with these two. And I'm not saying that the Nets are playing hardball. They could very well be exploring trades. Look, Kyrie Irving to the Lakers, they already know what that deal is. I mean, it's been reported for a while now that the shell of that deal has been done. And I believe it is. And the reason I believe it is because the Lakers can only offer and give up so much. So the Nets know what the Lakers can give for Kyrie Irving, and they also know what the Lakers are willing to give. So the shell of that trade is done. They don't need to explore the Kyrie Irving trade anymore. They don't need to renegotiate with the Lakers very much anymore. Once they trade Kevin Durant, maybe they sit down and kind of try to meet in the middle somehow. I can see that happening, but the Nets know what they're likely going to get for Kyrie Irving. It's Kevin Durant. And they are likely trying to play a little bit of hardball, but I do think as time progresses, Kevin Durant is good. He's just going to keep showing that I don't want to be here. And you don't want to run that risk. You don't want to go into training camp and your coach, Steve Nash, knows Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving want him fired. You're trying to implement this new team. You're trying to implement this new system. You're trying to get a guy like Ben Simmons who just sat out an entire season to buy in and believe in the Brooklyn Nets and believe like this is the place for him so he can get back to being the player that he was, that star player he was in Philly. And if you have your two superstars just trying to sabotage your team and sabotage your year, it just does you no good. Like playing hardball, trying to keep Kevin Durant. Like I see a lot of people that are just like, Kevin Durant, like they don't have to trade Kevin Durant. They don't want to trade Kevin Durant. Like they're better off keeping Kevin Durant. The Nets are a contender with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons. Absolutely, you're right. 100%. They are a contender. But guess what? It doesn't matter what the paper says. It matters who's on the court. If Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant aren't on the court, or even if it's just Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons, you're no longer a contender. And at any moment, Kyrie Irving could just say, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm sick of this, trade me. And now if you're the Lakers, are you going to give up, a king's ransom to go get Kyrie when he's imploding the net? It just can be a total disaster. If Kevin Durant doesn't show up, or if Kevin Durant pulls a Vince Carter, the Nets are in trouble, like serious trouble. Like you're better off just cutting your loss and move on. And I do think Josiah wants to do that. I do think he wants to just cut his losses and move on. And it makes no sense to keep these guys on the roster because they're not going to play. And if they do play, they're not going to give you 100%. They're going to Kevin Durant's not going to go out there and try to like roll his ankle or try to be aggressive and stuff like that. He's going to be out there probably just jacking up threes. And if he has a great night and shoots lights out, then great. If he doesn't, who cares? It's just you're gonna have a team that's not bought in. All your stars don't care. You're better off trading Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and running with the rest of the guys you have now, because at least they'll buy in and at least they'll play and they'll have something to prove. And we've seen teams overachieve. Like look at the Clippers last year. They lose Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and they were essentially a playoff team. If it wasn't for the play-in, they would have been a playoff team. So who's to say Brooklyn can't do that? They still have a ton of talent on the team besides Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. If Ben Simmons can get back to Philly Ben Simmons, I think you do have a puncher's chance to at least get into the play-in. I think you're at least good enough to get into, you may be able to squeeze into a playoff seed because it really does fall off in the Eastern Conference. Like, no teams in the Eastern Conference towards the bottom of the standings are really that great that, a team without Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving can't overcome, especially with a guy like Ben Simmons. TJ Warren, if he could get back to being that 20-point-a-game TJ Warren, then there's your go-to scorer. I just think that at this point, it's in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets just to move off of him. And we're starting to see more and more reports and more of these, experts and analysts saying, like, Kevin Durant sitting out is becoming a real thing. He doesn't want to play for them. He wants them to trade him, and he's going to do whatever it takes to get that done, to see that through. And I just think if you're the Nets, you don't want to go into training camp and him sitting out and him not showing up, because you're just going to the longer you draw this out, the more leverage you're going to lose. And you've already lost a ton of leverage. So why would you keep doing that? Get what you can now, because who knows what's going to happen later. What if Boston comes out and they're blazing and they're just killing it this year, and they're like, wow, like, man, they really grew, they developed, like, this team is scary. Why would they trade for Kevin Durant at that point? Brooklyn Nets run the risk of just Xing themselves out of deals. I mean, the well is already dried up because they waited for so long. Now look, you're going to continue to wait. You're going to continue to ride it out. And it's just gotten worse. The longer you've waited, the worse it's gotten. So, like, what's next? What's next on the horizon for Kevin Durant and this Brooklyn Nets team? I just think at this point, just cut your losses and move on. I understand it's Kevin Durant, but if you could get Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart in like a first or two, do that. Because you got two young guys that can come in, keep you competitive with Ben Simmons, TJ Warren, Seth Curry, Joe Harris, Patty Mills, Nick Claxton. Maybe you can even pull off another deal, like if you can go with the Lakers and maybe get it like a Miles Turner or something. And all of a sudden, you're probably a top, 6 to 7 team, maybe even better, depending on the chemistry and stuff. And like I said, people overachieving, trying to show like we are more than Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I mean, seriously, if you end up with a team of, say, Marcus Smart, Seth Curry, Jaylen Brown, Ben Simmons, and even just Nick Claxton, right? Even if you just have Claxton, or if you could get Turner, that's even better. But like that starting five is really similar to the Celtics, several years ago. And that team made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, so what's the difference? Like, you have your go-to guy in Jaylen Brown. You get the guy that can be your bona fide number one. You have TJ Warren, who could be a starter or even like your sixth man if he's putting up 20 points a game. Ben Simmons doesn't have to be the number one guy. He can just be the facilitator. You have enough shooting where you don't have to worry about him shooting. It's a great situation if you're Brooklyn. I mean, you're not a title contender, or at least I don't think so, but you never know. Get a couple breaks, couple injuries or something, all of a sudden you're there. I mean, we saw it with Boston. We saw it with Milwaukee when they went on their title run. So, I mean, you get a couple chips to fall on your side, and all of a sudden you're in the finals, or you're in the Eastern Conference Finals or something. It's just, I just think at this point you're best off moving on, because your season can't be worse than it was last year. And it can if you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. But if you go and get a Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, or even a Jaylen Brown and Derek White or something, if you just go get those guys and you put them with the team you already have, you're going to be better than you were last year. You are. So anyway, as always, that's my opinion, and I pass the question on to you. Let me know yours down in the comment section below. What do you think about this whole Kevin Durant mess? Do you think he actually would not show up to training camp? Do you think he's the kind of player that, hey, he will sit out. He wants to be traded. If you're not going to trade him, fine, then I just won't play. And I'll just continue to show and prove to you that I don't want to be here. Or if he does play, do you think he pulls a Vince Carter? Do you think he just sabotages the team and just does whatever? I mean, again, teams are still going to trade for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant could go out there and not take a single shot for the entire season, and teams will still go trade for Kevin Durant because they know what Kevin Durant is capable of if he's bought in and if he plays. So Kevin Durant isn't worried about teams trying to trade for him. He could sit out the entire season and teams will trade for him. He had to miss an entire season when he went to Brooklyn, and Brooklyn gave him a max. And Brooklyn wasn't the only team trying to do that. There were plenty of teams that were trying to do that. But anyway, again, however you feel about it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.